The grand hall was bigger than anything Lauren Mitchell had ever seen. She stood at the center, feeling very small. Around her, creatures from 100 different worlds watched with eyes that seemed to find her amusing. Some had 4 arms, some had scales, and some looked like they were made of living crystal. Lauren wore her best formal suit, but it felt cheap compared to the glowing robes and armor of the aliens around her. She had traveled 3 months to get here. Earth had sent her as their ambassador, their voice to the Galactic Empire. For 30 years, humans had been trying to get the attention of the great powers that ruled the stars. Now finally, they had been given a chance to speak. But nobody seemed to be taking them seriously. A massive creature named Vexthor sat at the head of the council. He had 6 eyes and skin that looked like rough stone. When he spoke, his voice rumbled like distant thunder. "So these are the humans," he said, and Lauren could hear the mockery in his tone. "The species that still burns chemicals to fly through space." "How charming." Laughter rolled through the chamber. Lauren felt her face grow hot, but she kept her expression calm. Next to her, Lieutenant Jake Morrison stood at attention. His hand rested on the sword at his hip, an old military blade that had been in his family for centuries. It looked out of place here, where everyone carried weapons that could vaporize matter or bend space itself. "We understand we have much to learn," Lauren began. Her voice carried clearly through some kind of translation system that turned her words into sounds the aliens could understand. "But Earth would like to request associate membership in the Galactic Empire. We believe we can contribute, even if our technology is not as advanced as yours." A female alien made of crystal fragments laughed. Her name was Duchess Kalira, and her voice sounded like breaking glass. "Contribute? What could you possibly offer us? Your planet has nothing we need. Your military could not stop a single one of our patrol ships. Your people cannot even agree among themselves about basic things." More laughter. Lauren glanced at Captain Peter Hayes, who stood at the edge of their small group. Peter was 50 years old and had spent his whole life preparing Earth's defenses for a moment like this. His jaw was tight, his hands clenched into fists. "We have survived much," Lauren said, keeping her voice steady. "We have overcome wars, diseases, natural disasters. We have learned to work together despite our differences. That experience has value." Vexthor raised one massive hand and the laughter died down. "Perhaps it does. But not enough value for membership. Let me be clear, Ambassador Mitchell. The Galactic Empire is built on strength. Species earn their place through power. You have none." Lauren felt something cold settle in her stomach. "Then what are you offering us?" "Protectorate status," Vexthor announced. "You will give us resources from your planet each year. In return, we will not take everything. We will leave you enough to survive. You should be grateful. Many species would simply take what they want and leave you with nothing." The words hit Lauren like a physical blow. This was not negotiation. This was a demand for surrender. Earth would become a colony in all but name, stripped of resources and dignity. "We cannot accept those terms," Lauren said quietly. The chamber went completely silent. Vexthor leaned forward and his 6 eyes narrowed. "What did you say?" "I said we cannot accept protectorate status. We came here seeking partnership, not slavery." Duchess Kalira's crystalline form flickered with what might have been anger. "Then you came for nothing. If you refuse our protection, any species in the Empire may claim your world. We will not stop them. Is that what you want?" Lauren looked back at her small team. Peter gave her a slight nod. Jake's hand had moved back to rest on his sword. They had discussed this possibility during the long journey here. They had known the Empire might not welcome them as equals, but they had also agreed. Earth would not bow. "We prefer to stand on our own," Lauren said firmly. "We will defend ourselves." The laughter that followed was louder than before. Some aliens were practically howling with amusement. The idea that Earth could defend itself against the might of the Galactic Empire seemed to be the funniest thing they had heard in years. Vexthor shook his massive head. "You are either very brave or very stupid." "I suspect the latter." "Very well. This meeting is over. Go home to your little planet and wait. Someone will come for what they want. You will learn what it costs to refuse the Empire's generosity." As Lauren turned to leave, she heard Duchess Kalira speaking to another council member, just loud enough for the humans to hear. "I give them 5 years before they come crawling back, begging to be slaves. Such proud fools." The walk back to their ship felt long. The corridors of the council building were beautiful, made of materials that seemed to glow with their own light. But Lauren barely noticed. Her mind was racing, thinking about what would happen next. That went about as badly as it could have, Peter said once they were safely inside their vessel. The ship was called the Endeavor, and it was the best Earth could build. But compared to the massive warships they had seen in the Empire's ports, it looked like a toy. We knew it might, Lauren replied. She sat down heavily in the command chair. They see us as primitives, as children playing at being adults. Jake stood nearby, his ancient sword still at his hip. So what do we do now? We prepare, Peter said grimly. If someone is coming to take what they want from Earth, we need to be ready. Lauren nodded. How long do you think we have? Not long. The Empire runs on strength and fear. Someone will want to make an example of us to show what happens when a weak species refuses the Empire's terms. He was right. Lauren knew he was right. But she also knew that Earth had no choice. They could not live as subjects, stripped of their freedom and dignity. Better to fight and lose than to surrender without trying. The journey home took another 3 months. During that time, Lauren sent messages ahead, warning Earth's leadership about what had happened. She knew that preparations would already be starting. Weapons being readied, defenses being strengthened, plans being made. But would it be enough? Earth had nuclear weapons, railguns, missiles that could destroy cities. But the Empire had weapons that could crack planets. They had shields that could stop anything humans could throw at them. They had been conquering worlds when humans were still living in caves. Still, Lauren thought about what she had seen in that council chamber. She had seen arrogance. She had seen being so comfortable in their power that they could not imagine being challenged. The Empire had been dominant for so long that they had forgotten what it meant to truly fight for survival. Humans had never forgotten. Every generation of humanity had faced some existential threat. They had learned to adapt, to innovate, to find solutions when none seemed possible. That was their strength. Not power, but persistence. Not might, but stubbornness. As the Endeavor finally entered Earth's solar system, Lauren looked at the blue and green planet hanging in the darkness of space. It was so small, so fragile, but it was home, and they would defend it with everything they had. "Welcome back, Ambassador," came a voice over the communication system. It was Admiral Clark, head of Earth's combined space forces. "We received your messages. We have been preparing. Whatever comes, we will be ready." Lauren hoped he was right. She hoped that humanity's cleverness and determination would be enough to overcome the vast gap in technology and power. Because ready or not, the Galactic Empire would soon learn that humans did not surrender easily. They would learn that even the smallest, weakest species could bite back when cornered. They would learn that laughing at humanity was a mistake. 6 months had passed since the disastrous meeting with the Galactic Council. Lauren Mitchell stood in the command center deep beneath Geneva, staring at screens that showed the solar system. 3 red dots had just appeared at the edge of human space, and they were getting closer. The Xanthari had come. "How big are they?" Lauren asked, though she already knew the answer would not be good. Commander Lisa Grant looked up from her station. "Each ship is 3 times the size of the Endeavor. Their weapon systems are reading at power levels we have never seen before, Ambassador. If they decide to attack, our conventional defenses will not stop them." Lauren closed her eyes for a moment. She had known this was coming. The Empire had made their position clear. Refuse their terms, and someone would come to take what they wanted by force. The Xanthari Collective had apparently decided Earth would be easy prey. "Are they hailing us?" Lauren asked. "Yes. Audio only. Put them through." Duchess Kalira's voice filled the command center, and Lauren recognized the smugness in her tone. "Humans. Your foolish pride at the council was amusing, but now reality arrives. Surrender control of your mining operations and industrial facilities. We will leave you enough to survive. Resist, and we will simply take everything. You have 1 hour to decide." The communication cut off before Lauren could respond. She looked around the room at the faces of her people. Everyone knew what was at stake. This was not just about resources or pride anymore. This was about whether humanity would exist as a free species or spend the next 1,000 years as slaves. "Get me Captain Hayes," Lauren said. Peter Hayes appeared on the main screen within seconds. He was aboard the Endeavor, currently positioned near Mars along with Earth's other major warships. His face was grim but determined. "I heard the message," Peter said. What are your orders? What are our chances in a direct fight? Lauren asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. Honestly, almost zero. Their shields can absorb anything our missiles and railguns can deliver. Their weapons outrange ours by a significant margin. They could stand off and destroy our ships one by one, and we could not touch them. Peter paused. But we do have one advantage they do not know about. Lauren felt a small spark of hope. Project Olympus? Project Olympus, Peter confirmed. After the council meeting, we suspected something like this would happen. We accelerated deployment of the stealth weapons platforms. 12 of them are now positioned throughout the solar system. They are powered down and coated with materials that make them nearly invisible to standard sensors. Colonel Danny Wright appeared in a smaller window on the screen. He commanded Earth's orbital marines and had been instrumental in developing the Olympus platforms. Each platform is equipped with railguns operating at relativistic speeds. Nothing fancy by Empire standards, but we have made them work at scales they think impossible for our technology level. The Zenthari will advance expecting to face our visible fleet, Peter continued. They will have their shields forward, weapons ready, confident in their superiority. They will not be scanning for stealth platforms because they do not believe we have the technology to build them. Lauren studied the tactical display. The plan was risky. Everything depended on surprise, on the Zenthari being exactly as arrogant as they had seemed at the council. If the platforms were detected, if the weapons failed, if anything went wrong, Earth would have no second chance. What do you need from me? Lauren asked. Permission to engage, Peter said simply, and permission to use the Endeavor, Valiant, and Apollo as bait. We need to draw them in, make them commit to an attack pattern that brings them into range of the platforms. Lauren thought about the crews on those ships. Hundreds of people who would be putting themselves directly in harm's way. If the plan failed, they would be the first to die. But if they did nothing, everyone on Earth would eventually die or worse. You have permission, Lauren said. Give the Zenthari our answer. Tell them Earth's answer is no. Peter nodded and cut the connection. Lauren watched the tactical display as the human ships began moving into position. The 3 Zenthari warships continued their approach, confident and unhurried. They had done this before, conquered countless worlds. Earth was just one more weak species to be subdued. The hour passed. Lauren imagined Duchess Calira aboard her flagship, smiling as she prepared to teach humanity a lesson. She imagined the Zenthari crews bored perhaps, seeing this as routine work rather than real combat. Then the Zenthari opened fire. The first shot was meant as a demonstration. A beam of energy that could boil oceans struck Orbital Platform 7, one of Earth's older defensive stations. The explosion was visible from the ground, a brief flash of light in the daytime sky. 40 people died in an instant. All ships, move to intercept. Peter's voice came over the command center speakers. Execute pattern Delta. The Endeavor, Valiant, and Apollo accelerated toward the Zenthari formation. It looked like a frontal assault, exactly the kind of brave but foolish action the Empire would expect from humans. The Zenthari ships adjusted their formation, shields shimmering as they prepared to swat aside Earth's pathetic defense. The distance closed. 2 million kilometers, 1.5 million, 1 million. Olympus platforms. Peter's voice was steady, calm. You are weapons free. Fire on my mark. Lauren held her breath. Everything came down to this moment. Years of secret development, months of careful positioning, all for the next few seconds. Mark. From 12 hidden positions throughout the solar system, the Olympus platforms came to life. Their railguns had been carefully aimed at predicted intercept points. They fired solid projectiles, nothing more than dense metal accelerated to a fraction of light speed. Simple physics turned into devastating weapons. The Zenthari shields were designed to deflect energy weapons and absorb explosions. They were magnificent pieces of technology, nearly impenetrable by conventional means. But they had not been designed to stop solid mass moving at relativistic speeds. The first projectile hit the lead Zenthari warship and punched through the shield like it was not there. The second and third projectiles followed microseconds later. tearing through the crystalline hull. The ship did not explode so much as shatter, breaking into thousands of pieces that tumbled through space. Lauren watched the tactical display in stunned silence. One shot. One shot had destroyed a warship that should have been invincible. The other two Zenthari ships tried to evade, their captains suddenly realizing they were not facing helpless prey, but the Olympus platforms had been built specifically for this scenario. The targeting computers calculated new trajectories faster than organic minds could react. More projectiles launched. More impacts. Within 30 seconds of the first shot, all three Zenthari warships were destroyed. The command center was completely silent. Nobody moved, nobody spoke. They had just witnessed something that should have been impossible. Earth, with its primitive technology and small fleet, had destroyed 3 of the Empire's warships without losing a single vessel. "Confirm all targets destroyed." Peter's voice broke the silence. "All platforms power down and return to stealth mode. All ships begin recovery operations for any Zenthari survivors." Lauren found her voice. "There are survivors?" "Unknown, but we will search. If there are any, we will treat them according to the rules of war." Peter paused. "Ambassador, I think we need to contact the Galactic Council. They should know what happened here." Lauren nodded slowly. Her hands were shaking, she realized. The weight of what they had just done was beginning to sink in. They had not just defended themselves, they had struck a blow against the Empire itself. They had proven that humanity could fight back. But they had also just made themselves either very respected or very dangerous. The Empire would have to respond. The question was how. Over the next few hours, recovery teams searched the debris field. They found 17 Zenthari survivors, injured but alive. Earth's medical teams treated them, and they were placed in comfortable detention. Lauren made sure they were treated well. The galaxy needed to see that humans fought when necessary, but showed mercy when possible. Then came the moment Lauren had been both dreading and anticipating. She stood before a communication screen, waiting for the connection to the Galactic Council. When it came through, she saw Counselor Vexthor's massive face, and for the first time, he was not smiling. "Ambassador Mitchell." Vexthor's voice was carefully controlled. "The Council has received reports about an incident in your system. The Zenthari Collective claims you attacked their ships without provocation. The Zenthari entered our system, issued an ultimatum, and opened fire on our installations," Lauren replied calmly. 40 of our people died in their first attack. We responded in self-defense." "You destroyed 3 warships," Vexthor said, "with weapons you claimed not to possess." "We claimed our technology was primitive by your standards," Lauren corrected. "We never said we were defenseless. The Council never asked for a detailed inventory of our capabilities. You were too busy laughing to ask intelligent questions." Several Council members reacted with shock at her directness, but Lauren was past the point of careful diplomacy. Earth had proven itself in the only language the Empire truly understood. "Power. The Zenthari are demanding compensation," Duchess Kal'ira's voice cut in, even through the translator. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was tense. Lauren Mitchell walked into the grand chamber with her head held high, though her heart was pounding. The destruction of the Zenthari ships had created a crisis in the Empire. For the first time in centuries, a primitive species had struck back effectively. The laughter was gone now. The aliens who had mocked humanity 6 months ago now watched her with wary respect or barely concealed hostility. Lauren took her position at the speaking podium, with Jake Morrison beside her. His ancient sword caught the light, and she noticed several counselors staring at it with new interest. Counselor Vexthor called the session to order, his 6 eyes fixed on Lauren. "Ambassador Mitchell, the Council has reviewed the incident in your system. The Zenthari Collective has filed a formal complaint. They claim your attack was unprovoked and excessive." Lauren kept her voice calm and clear. "The Zenthari entered our system with 3 warships. They demanded we surrender control of our resources. When we refused, they destroyed one of our orbital platforms and killed 40 people. We acted in self-defense. Nothing more, nothing less. You destroyed 3 warships with weapons you claim not to possess," Duchess Kal'ira said, her crystalline form flickering with anger. "You deceived the Council. We said our technology was primitive by your standards, Lauren replied. That was true. We never provided a detailed list of our capabilities because the council never asked. You dismissed us as too weak to matter. That was your mistake, not our deception. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. No one spoke to the council so directly, especially not a species with only one star system. Bexthor raised a hand for silence. The council acknowledges that Earth has demonstrated unexpected defensive capabilities. This changes certain factors in our assessment. We are prepared to offer revised protectorate terms with reduced tribute in recognition of your military strength. We decline, Lauren said immediately. Then what do you want? Vexthor's voice carried frustration. You reject our protection but clearly cannot stand alone against the entire Empire. Your victory against 3 ships means nothing if we send 30. What is your goal here? Lauren had been preparing for this moment since the battle ended. She had consulted with Earth's leaders, military commanders, historians, and legal experts. What humanity needed was not just survival but recognition as equals, and in the Galactic Empire there was only one path to that recognition. We invoke the right of trial by combat, Lauren declared. The chamber fell completely silent. Even the quiet sounds of alien breathing and movement seemed to stop. Jake Morrison's hand moved to rest on his sword, the gesture suddenly carrying weight. Explain, Vexthor demanded after a long pause. The Imperial Charter, Section 12, Article 7. Any species may claim full membership rights by demonstrating military capability through formal combat. One champion from the petitioning species faces one champion chosen by the Council. Armed combat continuing until one fighter yields or cannot continue. If the petitioner wins, they receive full membership with all rights and privileges. If they lose, they accept council terms without negotiation. Duchess Kalira actually laughed, though it sounded nervous. That law is thousands of years old. It has not been used in living memory. No primitive species has ever been foolish enough to invoke it. Then Earth will be the first in recent history, Lauren said firmly, unless the Council is afraid to honor its own laws. The challenge hung in the air. To refuse would show weakness, would suggest the mighty Empire feared a single human warrior, but to accept meant giving Earth a real chance at full membership, something that would disrupt the carefully maintained power structure. Vexthor consulted with other counselors through private channels. Lauren waited, her face calm even though her pulse was racing. This was the biggest gamble of her life. If the Council refused, Earth would have gained nothing. If they accepted and Earth's champion lost, humanity would be enslaved forever. Finally, Vexthor turned back to her. The Council accepts your challenge. We will select our champion and you will select yours. The combat will take place in 1 week at the Arena of Tests on Kartos. Choose carefully, Ambassador. This decision determines your species' future for generations to come. As Lauren left the chamber, she felt the weight of every eye on her. She had committed Earth to a trial that could end in disaster. Now came the hard part, finding someone who could win. Back at the embassy, Lauren called an emergency meeting. Captain Peter Hayes, Colonel Danny Wright, and several military advisors gathered around the conference table. Jake Morrison stood by the window, his sword still at his hip. We need a champion, Lauren said without preamble. Someone who can fight whatever the Council throws at us. The Council will choose someone formidable, Peter said. Probably from one of the heavy world species. Larger, stronger, more experienced in this kind of combat. So we need someone fast, smart, and unpredictable, Danny suggested. Someone who can outthink them. I have someone in mind, Lauren said. But she is not going to like this. 3 hours later, Captain Megan Cole stood in the embassy conference room listening to Lauren explain the situation. Megan was 36 years old with short red hair and a compact athletic build. She had commanded the Valiant during the battle against the Zenthari, and her service record was impressive. You want me to fight in single combat against an alien warrior to determine Earth's future? Megan said slowly. Have I understood correctly? Yes, Lauren said simply. And you chose me because I won a few martial arts tournaments back on Earth? Megan's voice carried disbelief. Ambassador, those were sports competitions. This is real combat against someone who has probably trained their entire life to kill. I chose you, Lauren replied, because you are a 3-time champion in combined martial arts. Because your file says you trained in 6 different fighting styles. Because you spent 2 years studying historical weapons combat. And because when the Zenthari attacked, You kept your ship in the fight even when it would have been easier to retreat. Megan ran a hand through her hair, a nervous gesture Lauren had seen in her service photos. The Council will choose their best. Someone undefeated, unstoppable. Jake stepped forward and began unbuckling his sword. My ancestors carried this blade through 4 centuries of human history. It saw wars, revolutions, times of peace. It represents everything humanity has survived. He held the sword out to Megan. The blade was beautiful, clearly maintained with care despite its age. The grip was wrapped in leather that had been shaped by many hands over many years. I am not asking you to carry my sword, Jake said quietly. I am asking if you will carry Earth's determination into that arena. Not for glory, but for the simple right to exist as free people. Megan took the sword, feeling its weight. She gave it a test swing, and the blade moved smoothly through the air. It was heavier than modern training weapons, but perfectly balanced. If I do this, she said slowly, I do it my way. No interference, no second-guessing my training or tactics. Agreed, Lauren said immediately. And if I lose, if I die in that arena, then Earth becomes a protectorate, and future generations spend centuries buying back their freedom. Lauren met her eyes steadily. No pressure. Despite everything, Megan smiled. It was a terrible situation, but the honesty helped somehow. She looked at the sword again, at this piece of human history that had survived so much. All right, she said finally, I will do it. The next 7 days were the most intense of Megan's life. The embassy had a training facility, and she spent every waking hour there. The sword became an extension of her arm as she practiced forms, techniques, and movements. Jake proved to be more than the sword's keeper. He was genuinely skilled with bladed weapons and served as her primary training partner. The Council will choose someone big, Jake said during one session, blocking her strike and countering. Stronger than you, tougher than you, with more combat experience. So how do I win? Megan asked, resetting her stance. You outthink them. The Empire has been dominant so long they have forgotten what real fighting means. They know forms and techniques, established patterns. You need to be unpredictable, creative, human. They continued training, and Megan began to understand what Jake meant. This was not just about sword technique. It was about representing humanity's greatest strength. Adaptability. The ability to face impossible odds and find solutions that should not work, but somehow did. On the 6th day, Lauren brought news about the Council's champion. Warlord Krathor of the Drachmani species. 7 feet tall, 400 pounds, undefeated in 43 formal combats. He is considered one of the finest warriors in the Empire. Megan did not stop her practice routine, though her movements became sharper. Then I guess tomorrow we make him 43 wins and 1 loss. Lauren watched her work through the forms, the ancient human sword moving in patterns that warriors from centuries past would recognize. Tomorrow, one human woman would face an Empire legend with nothing but steel and determination. That night, Megan could not sleep. She sat in her quarters, the sword across her lap, thinking about what was coming. She thought about Earth, about the billions of people whose future rested on her ability to win a fight against someone bigger, stronger, and more experienced. She thought about her. The arena of tests was carved from a single massive crystal formation that had stood for over 5,000 years. It could hold 50,000 spectators, and today every seat was filled. Word of the human challenge had spread throughout the Empire, and beings from hundreds of worlds had come to witness what most expected would be a brief and brutal lesson. Megan Cole stood in the preparation chamber beneath the arena, the ancient sword in her hand. She could hear the roar of the crowd above, a sound that seemed to shake the very walls. Her heart was pounding, but her hands were steady. 7 days of intense training had prepared her body. Now she needed to prepare her mind. Jake Morrison made final adjustments to her armor, checking each strap and plate. Remember the plan. Stay mobile. Do not let him pin you down. You are faster than he is. Use that. I know, Megan said. She had heard the advice 100 times over the past week. But she appreciated Jake's presence. It helped to have someone there who believed she could win. One more thing, Jake said. He met her eyes. Whatever happens out there, you have already made Earth proud. You are about to walk into that arena and face an Empire legend. That takes courage most people will never understand. Megan nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Then the arena doors opened and she walked into the light. The noise hit her like a physical force, 50,000 voices speaking in languages she could not understand, creating a wall of sound that was both terrifying and exhilarating. She stepped onto the crystal floor, feeling it hum beneath her feet with some kind of energy field designed to protect the arena structure itself. Across the vast space, another door opened. Warlord Krathor emerged. Jake's description had not done him justice. The Drachmani was massive, 7 feet of gray-scaled muscle and controlled power. His 4 arms each carried a different weapon, a sword, an axe, a spear, and a curved blade she did not recognize. His eyes, deep red and cold, fixed on her with the confidence of someone who had never known defeat. Counselor Vex Thor's voice boomed across the arena, amplified by technology Megan could not comprehend. People of the Galactic Empire, you have gathered to witness trial by combat. On one side stands Warlord Krathor, champion of the Council, undefeated in 43 battles. On the other, Captain Megan Cole of Earth, representing humanity's petition for full membership. The crowd's reaction was mixed. Most seemed to find the match amusing, but some watched with genuine curiosity. They had heard about the destruction of the Zenthari ships. They wanted to see if humans could back up their reputation. The rules are ancient and simple, Vex Thor continued. Combat continues until one fighter yields or cannot continue. Killing is permitted but not required. Victory grants the petitioning species full membership, with all rights and privileges. Defeat means acceptance of council terms without negotiation. Are the fighters ready? Megan raised her sword in acknowledgement. Krathor smiled, revealing rows of sharp teeth, and raised all 4 weapons. Then let the trial begin. Krathor did not wait. He charged forward with surprising speed for someone his size, his 4 weapons moving in a complex pattern designed to overwhelm any defense. Megan had studied recordings of his previous fights and recognized the opening sequence. It was meant to intimidate, to force opponents into a defensive position where they would be vulnerable to his follow-up attacks. Instead, Megan ran toward him, closing the distance faster than he expected. She ducked under his high strikes, using her smaller size as an advantage, and scored a quick slash across his thigh as she rolled past. The blade cut through his scaled hide easier than it should have, drawing first blood. Krathor roared, more in surprise than pain. He spun with remarkable speed, but Megan was already moving, refusing to let him pin her down. The crowd's noise changed pitch. This was not going to be the quick victory they expected. Stand and fight, Krathor bellowed in the Empire's common language. Or are humans cowards? Megan ignored the taunt. She had no intention of standing still and trading blows with someone who could probably kill her with a single solid hit. Instead, she kept moving, circling, forcing him to turn and adjust. It was exhausting, but it was her only real advantage. They clashed again, and this time Krathor was more cautious, respecting her speed if not her strength. His 4 weapons created a deadly pattern that seemed impossible to penetrate. Megan watched carefully, looking for weaknesses in his form. Jake had taught her that everyone had patterns, unconscious habits that could be exploited. There. A fractional hesitation in his lower left weapon as he repositioned. It was tiny, probably invisible to most opponents, but Megan had spent 7 days learning to see such things. She darted in, deflected his lower left blade with her sword, used her free hand to push off his arm for leverage, and drove her knee into the same thigh she had cut earlier. Krathor grunted and his stance wobbled slightly. It was not much, but it was progress. Megan disengaged before he could counter, moving back to a safe distance. The crowd was fully engaged now, the noise building as they realized this might actually be a real fight. Minutes passed. 5, then 10, then 20. Megan accumulated small injuries, cuts and bruises from near misses and glancing blows. But Krathor was bleeding from a dozen minor wounds and his breathing had become labored. The injured thigh was affecting his footwork, slowing him down. You cannot win, he growled during a brief pause. Even if you cut me 1,000 times, one solid hit from me ends this. Then I guess I better not let you hit me, Megan replied, and attacked again. This time she changed her approach entirely. Instead of hit-and-run tactics, she engaged him directly, blade against blade. It was risky, exactly what he wanted. But Megan had noticed something important about Krathor's fighting style. It was built on forms, on techniques that had worked for decades. When faced with something unexpected, he relied on training rather than improvisation. So she gave him chaos. She mixed techniques from 6 different martial arts, threw in moves from ancient earth sword fighting, and improvised when nothing else worked. She was not trying to match his strength. She was trying to confuse his instincts. It worked. Krathor's responses became slower as his brain tried to categorize what she was doing. The delay was tiny, just milliseconds, but it was enough. Megan's blade found his right shoulder, cutting deep into muscle. One of his 4 weapons dropped to the crystal floor with a ringing sound that echoed through the arena. The crowd went absolutely wild. The undefeated champion was wounded, bleeding, struggling, but he was also enraged. With a bellow that seemed to shake the arena itself, Krathor launched himself at Megan with complete abandon. He no longer cared about defense, just about landing one devastating blow. His 3 remaining weapons moved in a furious assault that drove Megan back toward the arena wall. She was trapped. No room left to maneuver. Krathor raised all 3 blades for a combined strike that would end the fight. Megan made a decision that went against every instinct. She dropped her sword. The unexpected action made Krathor hesitate just for an instant. His brain could not process why an opponent would disarm themselves. In that moment of confusion, Megan dove forward inside his reach, too close for his weapons to be effective. She grabbed his injured right arm with both hands and pulled, using every technique Jake had taught her about leverage and momentum. She added a shoulder throw that her first martial arts instructor had shown her 30 years ago in a gym on Earth. Krathor, 7 feet of alien warrior, went tumbling over her shoulder and crashed to the crystal floor with a sound like thunder. Before he could recover, Megan had retrieved her sword and placed the point against his throat. The arena fell completely silent. 50,000 spectators held their breath. "Yield," Megan said quietly. The word meant only for him. Krathor looked up at her. Blood ran from his wounds. His breath came in gasps. In his eyes, she saw the moment of calculation. He could probably still overpower her, even from this position. But it would cost him, and the outcome was no longer certain. More importantly, she had earned something from him, something the Empire had forgotten existed. "Respect. I yield," he said clearly, his voice carrying across the silent arena. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the crowd erupted in a roar that dwarfed everything that had come before. Megan stepped back, lowering her sword, and extended her hand to help Krathor to his feet. He looked at her hand for a moment, then took it, allowing her to help him up despite the fact that he outweighed her by several hundred pounds. "You fight without honor," he said, but there was no anger in his voice, just observation. "I fight to win," Megan replied. "That is the human way." Krathor considered this, then nodded slowly. "Perhaps that is honor enough." Counselor Vexthor's voice cut through the noise. "The trial is concluded. Captain Megan Cole of Earth is victorious. By the ancient laws of the Empire, humanity's petition for full membership is granted." The words took a moment to fully register. Megan stood in the center of the arena, battered and exhausted, and realized what had just happened. She had won. Earth had won. They had earned their place among the stars through nothing but determination and an antique sword. In the viewing box reserved for the human delegation, Lauren Mitchell felt tears streaming down her face. They had done it. Against all odds, against an empire that... 3 months had passed since the trial by combat, and Ambassador Lauren Mitchell stood before the Galactic Council once again. Everything had changed. The aliens who had once laughed at humanity now watched her with careful attention. Some showed respect, others showed concern, but none showed contempt. She wore formal robes now, midnight blue with silver threading that marked her as a full council member. It felt strange after months of being treated as little more than an irritating primitive. Beside her stood Captain Megan Cole, who had been appointed as Earth's military liaison to the Empire. The ancient sword still hung at her hip, no longer a curiosity but a symbol of human determination. Counselor Vexthor called the session to order, his massive form shifting as he addressed the chamber. "Ambassador Mitchell, Earth has been granted full membership in the Galactic Empire. You are entitled to 1 seat on this council, representation in the Imperial Senate, and full trading rights throughout Empire space. You must also contribute to defense forces and pay your share of administrative costs." "We understand and accept these terms," Lauren replied. Her voice was calm, confident. They had earned this place, and she would not apologize for it. However, Duchess Kalira interjected, her crystalline form shimmering with agitation. "There is a matter we must address. Your species possesses technologies that were not disclosed during initial contact. The Olympus weapons platforms that destroyed our ships, for instance. As a full member, Earth is required to share technological developments with the Empire. Lauren smiled, and there was steel in that smile. With respect, Duchess, that requirement applies to technologies developed after admission to the Empire. The Olympus platforms were developed before our membership. However, in the spirit of cooperation, Earth is willing to share certain technologies in exchange for access to Imperial knowledge banks and educational resources. It was negotiation, not surrender. The difference was everything. The Council could no longer dictate terms to Earth. They had to bargain as equals. Bexthor considered this. That seems reasonable. We will establish a committee to develop a framework for mutual technological exchange. Ambassador, your participation in this committee would be valued. The meeting continued for another hour. They discussed trade agreements, territorial boundaries, and defense obligations. Earth's single star system seemed tiny compared to the vast holdings of older species, but it was sovereign territory now, protected by imperial law. As the session concluded, several counselors approached Lauren. They wanted to understand this species that had disrupted centuries of careful hierarchy. Earth had proven they could fight, but now came the harder test, proving they could function as partners. Ambassador, a deep voice rumbled behind her. Lauren turned to find Warlord Krathor approaching. He had recovered from his injuries and now served as the Council's chief military advisor. His right shoulder still showed scars from Megan's blade, marks he apparently wore with something resembling pride. Warlord, Lauren greeted him. How can I help you? I wish to speak with you privately if you have time. They walked to a quieter area of the council chamber, away from the crowds of diplomats and advisors. Krathor seemed to be choosing his words carefully, unusual for someone normally so direct. I have been studying human history, he said finally. Your species has fought more wars among yourselves than most species face from external enemies. You have nearly destroyed your own world multiple times. Yet you survive, adapt, grow stronger from each challenge. We are stubborn, Lauren said with a slight smile. Sometimes that is our greatest weakness. Sometimes our greatest strength. Indeed. Krathor paused. I wanted you to know that I do not resent my defeat in the arena. Captain Cole fought with great skill and intelligence. She taught me something important. There is more than one path to victory. The Empire has grown comfortable, relying on established methods and proven strategies. You humans improvise. You adapt. You find solutions that should not work, yet somehow they do. Thank you, Warlord. That means a great deal coming from you. Krathor nodded and returned to his duties. Lauren watched him go, considering his words. The Empire had been dominant for so long that they had forgotten how to innovate. They had forgotten what it meant to fight with desperation and creativity. Humanity had never had the luxury of forgetting. That evening, Lauren met with the expanded human delegation at their embassy. The building was much larger now, with dozens of specialists, advisors, and representatives handling Earth's new galactic responsibilities. The room buzzed with excited conversation. All right, everyone, Lauren called the meeting to order. We are full members now. All the rights and responsibilities that come with that status. Let us talk about our priorities going forward. Admiral Peter Hayes spoke first. He had been promoted after the successful defense against the Zenthari, and now commanded Earth's growing space force. Militarily, we are still outgunned by any major species. But the Olympus platforms proved we can innovate. I propose we continue developing weapons and tactics that take advantage of our unique perspective. Let other species build bigger ships. We will build smarter ones. Economically, Dr. Lisa Grant added, we have opportunities the Council does not even realize exist. Our manufacturing may be primitive by their standards, but it is flexible. We can produce customized goods quickly and cheaply. There is a market for that in an empire that has standardized everything. Culturally, Jake Morrison said, we need to establish our presence. The Empire has dismissed humanity for decades. We need to show them who we really are, our art, music, literature, philosophy. Let them see we are more than clever warriors. Lauren listened to her team, feeling pride swell in her chest. These people would shape humanity's place among the stars, not as conquerors or subjects, but as partners bringing something unique to the galactic community. There is one more thing, Megan Cole said from her position by the window. Everyone turned to look at her. The trial by combat has sent ripples throughout the Empire. Several smaller species have contacted me privately. Species with limited representation or no council seat. They want to know how we did it. How we stood up to the Empire and won. What did you tell them? Lauren asked carefully. I told them the truth. that we were desperate, clever, and too stubborn to quit, that we found an ancient law and used it, that we got lucky? Megan paused. But I also told them that if we could do it, maybe they could too. Maybe the Empire does not have to be a hierarchy of strong over weak. Maybe it could be something better. Lauren felt a chill. They had set out simply to secure Earth's freedom and dignity, but perhaps they had sparked something larger without intending to. A reminder that the established order was not inevitable, that change was possible. We need to be careful, Peter warned. If the Council thinks we are encouraging rebellion, our membership will be very short. We are not encouraging anything, Lauren countered. We are just existing, being ourselves. If that inspires others to demand better treatment, that is the Council's problem to address, not ours. Over the following months, Earth settled into its new role. Trade agreements were negotiated and signed. Cultural exchanges began, with human art and music finding surprisingly enthusiastic audiences on alien worlds. Technologies were shared in carefully structured deals that benefited both sides. The human space force grew. 6 new ships joined the fleet, and construction began on a proper space station at the edge of the solar system. Earth was building infrastructure that would let them function as a real galactic power. Not just a single system species lucky enough to have won a fight, but quietly, almost unnoticed at first, other changes were happening. Minor species began demanding better representation in the Imperial Senate. Protectorate worlds started questioning the terms of their agreements. The Empire, which had maintained stability through strength and fear for thousands of years, suddenly faced calls for reform from within. 6 months after Earth's admission, Duchess Calira finally addressed the issue directly in a council session. She rose, her crystalline form pulsing with agitated light. This council must acknowledge a truth we have ignored, she said. The human admission has destabilized our established order. Species that accepted subjugation for centuries now demand equality. Some have even invoked the right of trial by combat, seeking to earn membership as Earth did. Is that not their right? Lauren asked calmly. The law exists. If we used it fairly, surely others can as well. The law was meant to be symbolic, Vexthor rumbled. A tradition from ancient times maintained for historical reasons. No one expected it to be invoked successfully. Then perhaps the law should have been removed, Megan suggested from behind Lauren. Or perhaps the council should have been prepared to honor the principles it claimed to uphold. The chamber erupted in argument. Dozens of species voiced opinions ranging from support to outrage. Through it all, Lauren remained calm. This was what they had hoped for, was it not? Not just freedom for Earth, but a broader questioning of assumptions that had gone unchallenged for millennia. Finally, Vexthor called for order. The Council recognizes that changes are necessary. We propose forming a committee to review membership criteria, representation standards, and advancement mechanisms. Ambassador Mitchell. 1 year had passed since humanity joined the Galactic Empire, and the changes were becoming impossible to ignore. Lauren Mitchell sat in her office at the embassy, reviewing reports from across the galaxy. What had started as one species demanding recognition had grown into something much larger. 17 minor species had invoked the right of trial by combat in the past year. 12 had won their matches and gained full membership. The Empire's careful hierarchy was fracturing, and the old guard was growing increasingly nervous about what that meant for their power. A soft chime announced a visitor. Lauren looked up to see Jake Morrison entering with a data tablet. His expression was serious. "We have a problem," he said without preamble. "The Council is calling an emergency session. They are voting on whether to repeal the trial by combat law." Lauren felt her stomach tighten. They cannot do that. It is part of the fundamental charter. They are arguing that the law is being abused, that it was never meant for widespread use. Vexthor and his faction want to close what they are calling a loophole before more species exploit it, and condemn dozens of worlds back to protectorate status. Lauren stood, her mind already racing through possible responses. "When is the vote?" "Tomorrow. They want to move fast before more species can invoke the law." Lauren called an emergency meeting with her senior staff. Within an hour, Admiral Peter Hayes, Captain Megan Cole, Dr. Lisa Grant, and Colonel Danny Wright had gathered in the conference room. The atmosphere was tense. "If they repeal the law," Peter said bluntly, "it delegitimizes our own membership. They could argue that since we used a law that is no longer valid, our admission should be reconsidered." Would they really go that far? Lisa asked. Some would, Megan replied. She had spent the past year working closely with the Empire's military structure and understood the politics involved. There are factions within the Council that never accepted our admission. They see us as upstarts who got lucky. If they can use this as an excuse to put us back in our place, they will try. Then we need to stop the vote, Danny said. How? Jake asked. We have one seat on the Council. Even with the support of newly admitted species, we do not have the votes to block this. Lauren stood at the window, looking out at the alien city beyond. She had spent a year learning how the Empire worked, understanding its power structures and political games. There was a way to stop this, but it would be risky. We do not need to block the vote, she said slowly. We need to change what they are voting on. Everyone turned to look at her. Lauren turned back to face her team, her expression determined. The Council wants to repeal the trial by combat law because they see it as a threat to their power. They are right to be worried, but for the wrong reasons. The law is not the problem. The problem is that the Empire has built itself on subjugation rather than partnership. And how does that help us? Peter asked. We propose an alternative. Instead of repealing the law, we expand it. Create a proper framework for species advancement that does not rely on single combat. Establish clear criteria for membership, fair representation systems, and paths for protectorate species to earn their freedom through constructive means. Lisa leaned forward, understanding dawning in her eyes. You want to reform the entire Empire? I want to give the Council a choice, Lauren corrected. They can repeal one law and face increasing resentment from dozens of species who see it as a betrayal. Or they can embrace change, adapt the system to be more fair and maintain stability through justice rather than force. They will never agree to that, Danny said. Some will not, Lauren agreed, but others will see the wisdom in it. Vexthor is not stupid. He understands that empires fall when they become too rigid to adapt. If we can show him a path forward that maintains order while addressing legitimate grievances, he might take it. And if he does not? Megan asked. Lauren met her eyes. Then we fight. Not with swords this time, but with words and alliances. We make it clear that repealing the law means facing opposition from every species that has used it. We make the political cost higher than the benefit. The next morning, Lauren requested a private meeting with Councillor Vexthor before the general session. She met him in his private chambers, a massive room designed for someone of his size and stature. Ambassador Mitchell, Vexthor rumbled. I assume you wish to discuss the proposed repeal? I do. With respect, Councillor, I believe you are making a mistake. Explain. His 6 eyes fixed on her with complete attention. The trial by combat law is not the problem. The problem is that the Empire has spent centuries building a system where the only path to respect is through strength. That worked when you had overwhelming power and no real opposition, but now species like humanity have reminded everyone that strength comes in many forms. Your point? Repeal the law and you tell every minor species that the Empire fears them. You tell them that when they find a legitimate path to equality, you will simply remove that path. You create resentment, resistance, and eventual rebellion. Vexthor was silent for a long moment. And your alternative? Lauren pulled out a data tablet and projected a document into the space between them. We proposed a Galactic Reform Initiative, a comprehensive framework that maintains the trial by combat option, but adds other paths to advancement, economic development thresholds, cultural contribution metrics, technological innovation standards, democratic representation reforms. Vexthor studied the projection, his expression unreadable. This would fundamentally alter how the Empire functions. Yes, but it would also ensure the Empire survives. Counselor, I have studied the history of empires both in human civilization and in the records available here. Every empire that refused to adapt eventually collapsed. Everyone that found ways to evolve survived and prospered. You speak boldly for a species that has been a member for barely a year. I speak honestly, and I think you know I am right. Vexthor continued studying the proposal. Lauren waited, her heart pounding. Everything depended on this moment. If Vexthor dismissed her outright, the repeal would likely pass. But if she could convince him that reform was better than regression, they might have a chance. This would require support from a majority of the council, Vexthor said finally. Many will resist such dramatic changes. Many will also see the necessity. The Empire is changing whether the council wants it to or not. The only question is whether that change happens through planned reform or chaotic upheaval. Vexthor's expression shifted, and Lauren thought she saw something that might have been respect in his eyes. You are a dangerous species, humans. Not because of your weapons or your warriors, but because of ideas like this. Ideas are the most powerful weapons, Lauren said quietly. We learned that long ago. The emergency council session was packed. Every member attended, along with observers from dozens of species. The tension in the chamber was obvious. Everyone knew this vote would determine the Empire's future direction. Vexthor called the session to order. Council members, we are gathered to vote on the proposed repeal of the trial by combat law, Section 12, Article 7 of the Imperial Charter. Before we proceed to the vote, Ambassador Mitchell has requested time to present an alternative proposal. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Several councillors looked surprised that Vexthor was even allowing this. Lauren stepped to the speaking podium, feeling the weight of history on her shoulders. Honored council members, she began, I understand why many of you support the repeal. The trial by combat law has been invoked more in the past year than in the previous 1,000 years combined. It has disrupted established power structures and created uncertainty. These are legitimate concerns. She paused, letting her words sink in. But repealing the law will not solve the underlying problem. It will only delay the inevitable and create resentment among species who see a path to equality being closed off. Lauren activated her projection system, displaying the Reform Initiative framework. Earth proposes an alternative. Instead of repealing one law, we expand the system, create multiple paths to advancement, establish clear, fair criteria for membership, give protectorate species goals to work toward rather than leaving them in permanent subjugation. This is radical restructuring, Duchess Kalira objected. You propose to dismantle systems that have maintained order for millennia. I propose to adapt those systems so they can maintain order for millennia more, Lauren countered. Empires that refuse to change do not last. History proves this repeatedly. Warlord Krathor stood, his massive form commanding attention. I have studied this proposal at Ambassador Mitchell's request. While it is true that such changes would be significant, I believe they would also strengthen the Empire in the long term. A foundation built on consent and mutual benefit is stronger than one built on force alone. The debate continued for hours. Species that had recently won their memberships through trial by combat spoke in favor of the reforms. Older, more established powers expressed concerns about losing their privileged positions. The newer members argued that privilege without merit was not strength but weakness. Finally, Vexthor called for a vote. The council will choose between two proposals. First, the repeal of trial by combat law, returning to previous membership standards. Second, adoption of the Galactic Reform Initiative,